Welcome back to week 5, recovering a sense of possibility. And in this chapter, Julia talks about the discovery of the payoffs of, following the kind of rule book and not being your authentic self. And of course, also the fallouts from that. And first, she talks about limits. So the limits we sometimes put on ourselves, of course, maybe also they've come from the outside, but the limits we mostly put on ourselves, what we think we can achieve or what is possible for us to achieve. And in connection with that, she also talks about progress. And there are 2 sentences I wanted to share with you. And they are, I have said before that creativity is a spiritual issue. Any progress is made by leaps of faith, some small and some large. And in this context, she basically says those kind of leaps of faith are the things where we think, I would like to maybe do a floral workshop or buy myself this painting set and try this out or try that out, or maybe I want to write a book. And just following that, taking these leaps of faith to follow your inner artist, your inner artist child, and play and try different things out and kind of see where that leads you. Because I'm a believer that sometimes we maybe want to go towards one goal, but then in the end, something else, something better is waiting for us. But we first had to discover that that wasn't exactly what we needed, but that then gave us the idea to then move on to the next thing, right? And at the end, she also says if you have questions, if you have worries, or want some answers, ask that question before you go to bed, and then in the morning pages, write down the answer that you got in the dream of whatever you saw, whatever you felt, what your experience was. And I have done this before, but not with the morning pages. But I've had it that I've asked the question and then I woke up the next day and was like, well, that didn't make sense. That dream didn't make sense. And there was no way for me to make sense of that dream. So it is okay. Sometimes it'll take a couple of nights. So repeat that question. Sometimes just, let it go. And then all of a sudden, 1 week, 2 weeks later, you have a dream like, yep, I think that's my answer. So yeah, don't be discouraged if it takes a bit longer, basically. Moving on, Julia writes about finding the river. So finding your artist flow. And again, you have that in the morning pages that you start writing and all of a sudden it becomes easy, and then you get ideas. And also that on maybe days where things aren't going your way or they're really, really tough, that if you listen to it, if you give yourself space to listen to that little voice that says, it might be still interesting or fun to do this, even if it's just a kind of small action of being like, maybe, have a cup of tea, or, sit in your garden or on your balcony, or like open the window and just let the sunlight, shine on you and just feel the summer sun. Yeah, I mean, the weather is changing in the UK currently and the sun is coming out, not today, but the previous few days, and it's getting warmer, so those first rays of spring, summer sun can be really they bring you back to life, basically, especially if it's like been cold and dark for a long time. Another thing where she talks about going with the flow, and finding a river, is that sometimes our needs are met by people, places, and things. So if we ask for something, if we want something to happen, it might come in various different ways to us. Another thing she mentions is to become very clear internally what you want, and then taking a couple of first steps towards it. And she writes, take a few outward steps in the direction of the dream, only to have the universe fling open an unsuspected door. And that begs a question, or that brought up a question for me, because I found this week to be quite challenging. It brought up a couple of things. because, with possibility and believing and having hope and having your hopes raised, that can be quite difficult if you feel like you've been let down. And I felt very drawn to that section and tried to make sense of that for me. And maybe it could also mean that if we do get internally clear and do take steps towards that dream and no door opens, that there needs to be, or there can be, a slight redirection and trying something different. And that's, what The Artist Way writes about and what Julia writes about, that you try out different things and that you play around, and maybe the thing that you initially thought was the right, artist path for you might need a bit of adjustment. That's kind of how I thought that could be, interpreted. Following that, she writes about the virtue trap. So basically, as an artist, I should be suffering internally, or I should be living in solitude, or doing this or doing that, or put my artistry on second place and, have a different first priority. And she talks about, just kind of letting that go and ultimately finding the fun in things. And with that, she added 2 more exercises. One was a quiz about your forbidden joys, and the other one was a wish list. So 19 things where you can write in the book. So she wrote, I wish, and then you can write whatever you want. And those are kind of 19 wishes that you can just write down. I think it's just to further open the mind and to dream more and see what was actually a possibility. What would I love trying, even if it feels a bit naughty, or just different to what you're used to. And that was already everything in this chapter. It was a very short chapter, but I think there was a lot in there, at least for me. And so to the tasks, I did 7.5 tasks, because they were all really, really fun, and it was a lot, again, about dreaming, writing lists, finding pictures, but also understanding yourself, where you maybe block yourself or what you're annoyed about. I think the first task was, write down 5 reasons why you can't really have that faith or that hope. And that for me really allowed me to just, in my morning pages, go on a full rant and let out all my frustration and all my anger, and that felt really good and really healing. But that also brought up a couple of things. So if you go through this week and it feels a bit more emotional than other weeks, you're definitely not alone. I felt very, very affected by this chapter, let's say. And Artist Date, I went to watch a film and then I went for a long walk, because I felt like, I needed to work through a couple of things and just walk things off. And I did my morning pages. I did them every single day. I had 2 days where I did them in the afternoon, because I woke up and was feeling like I'm in a different flow, and I want to do them in the afternoon. And then writing them in the afternoon was perfect, because I had gone through a couple of things in the day, and then I could work through that in the morning pages. So again, trying to adapt it a bit to myself, listening to my intuition, but also sticking to it as much as I possibly can. And what's left? Yep, picking a card for this week. Let's see what we've got. Got 2 cards, and one is surrender, and the other one is self-acceptance. And I think that fits very well with what this week is about, especially the surrender card, surrendering to the process and just following it. And trusting it, and then self-acceptance, which I think also, of course, goes hand in hand with authenticity, which this chapter is about. And in order to be authentic, you need to accept every single part of yourself. All right, next week I'm back with week 6, and that is recovering a sense of abundance. So, thank you again for listening, for spending time with me, and have a wonderful week. Bye.